Welcome to another episode of What Teachers Have to Say. My name's Jake.
And I'm Nathan.
So we have a really fun topic today. We just finished recording it. We're talking about this research that has come out from the business world, not the education world.
Not the education world.
They've identified these 56 foundational skills that will, quote, I'm reading it right here. Yep. 56 foundational skills that will help citizens thrive in the future of work.
Yeah, that's literally what this report is titled.
And so a disclaimer.
Yeah.
Well, before we get into it, we always want to remind our listeners that the work that we do on What Teachers Have to Say is our own work, and it's not actually correlated or identified with our places of employment.
Yeah.
This is really just our way to enhance discussion in a career that we love and we feel passionate about.
To open a discourse and bring in some information from, other disciplines and other experts and inject that into our understanding of how to educate, because education is not in a vacuum. Education exists within a greater world and culture, and business is a part of that.
I do want to bring up, there's some problematic things around
it's
the
problematic to this
here,
company,
right? Because we're in the
study.
business world. Yeah. And so the research that we're going to talk about, just without getting totally into it, because we do unpack it in the episode.
Yep.
But I think it's pertinent to say that McKinsey Company is the company that did the research, and there have been some problematic things out there around this company. I also take that with a grain of they're one of the 3 largest consulting firms in the world. They're evil empire.
Yeah, they're evil empire. Right? That's just how it is.
And so this was originally delivered to the World Government Summit of 2023, which is a conglomeracy of business owners and governmental agencies trying to get better at what they do. Yeah. And so some people have a lot of problem with things like that. Rightfully so.
Rightfully so.
Like McKinsey Company, there's been some things that have come out that they're not great people, right? Yeah. Like they have widened the income gap. They've done some things. And to me, without getting way in the weeds, they're actually the people that our students are going to end up working for.
Exactly.
And so to me, I want to just recognize publicly that I do see that there's problems with the companies surrounding this research, but the skills and the things that we're going to talk about here, I don't have problems with.
Yeah, there were a lot of things in here that I really was surprised to hear from a business-focused company.
And
like one of the skills they're valuing is like empathy.
Empathy.
It's crazy.
Regulating your, or what is it? Regulating your emotions and recognizing your own triggers.
Exactly. So that's like in here, they're recognizing as skills that you need in the workplace. So that is very interesting to me. And if we're going to prepare our students for the world, we need to know what the world is asking of them.
Like this is one of the 3 largest companies in the world.
Yep.
I have no blinders on as to their whatever.
Yeah.
But these are the people that know the landscape.
Mm-hmm. And so they have the data.
And they have the data. And they are creating the jobs that students will be moving into. And they're saying, hey, if you want one of these future jobs, this is what we're looking for.
Yep.
So yeah. I just wanted to say that before we get into it, because there are people that will be familiar with the company, McKinsey Company. And there are, if you Google it, there's legitimately problematic things out there. But the recommendations in this specific data report, I found to be viable and very helpful.
Very interesting stuff. Stay to the end where we talk about how to teach to some of these skills.
Begin incorporating them in your classroom and reflecting on the fact that you're already doing a lot of them.
Yeah, you definitely are.
Yeah. All right, off we go. So I was introduced to some new research. There's a report. It's called The Skills Revolution and the Future of Learning and Earning. And it was a report that was brought out at the World Government Summit in 2023. So this is really new.
Super recent.
It's really recent. Okay. And I was introduced to it by Dr. Bill Daggett. He used it in one of his keynotes, and it kind of like lit my brain on fire.
Yeah.
because we've talked a lot about, here's why.
Yes.
Couching it.
Bring us in.
Here's why. So we have talked and we believe wholeheartedly in skills over content.
Yes.
So this is skills.
Oh.
Yeah. And so among other, basically what happened was, future topic. We know that education reform is driven by business.
It has been. It will continue to be.
So not to get into those weeds, but like the nation in crisis in the 80s, No Child Left Behind. And now we're in the midst of new reform happening.
Right.
Dr. Daggett calls it third wave education, which I think is interesting.
Third wave.
And it's always driven by business. And so to me, it makes sense to look to business for skills that they're looking for. Right. I mean, I don't like it. I don't love it. I don't want to be part of end stage capitalism.
Yeah,
but
we're not fans, but that is the system we're living in, right?
Yeah.
So I mean,
end stage capitalism.
I feel that was a good term. We often say late stage. You see late stage a lot, but end stage is kind of where we're feeling it sometimes. I feel like in the teaching profession, it's so common for us to be like, oh, if you want to get a job, these are you're going to need to learn how to turn things in on time. You're going to need to learn how to communicate. You're going to need to learn how to interface with the adults, authority figures. You're going to have to, practice all of these things. So we often justify a lot of our things that we do in our classes based on, you need that for life. You need to be able to know how to organize things. You need to, and we hold
sometimes
students
we're
accountable.
way off the mark because I was told I would never succeed because I wasn't going to pass PE. I'm not kidding you.
What?
I was told that in high school. I think I'm doing okay. And I did pass. I don't know. But
well, what I did is I wrote a letter that it was actually damaging to my education. I needed the time for other academic endeavors. And that got me out of PE. So
my little advocate. Well, so this report, I find this report very interesting. Among other things, basically they polled a huge data set. I think it was multiple millions,
it's in the millions
of people.
From what I looked at. Now, Jake is the expert here. I'm kind of following along.
Jake is the explorer
with with this information, but I have looked it over. And
I've read the report. I've thought a lot about it.
They have access. They have access to huge data sets.
That's the thing.
So that's why they can. Make these assertions.
I think it's really interesting to also look outside of education for information that is pertinent to education. Right? Like we've talked about Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
Right. Amazing, awesome, whatever. He's part of the big industrial
Educators
complex.
Love Simon Sinek.
But also what he talks about in business applies a lot to what we do. So, what do I want to do today? Because this is my baby. I'm so interested in this topic. Because I want to know what skills I should be focusing on.
Right.
Even though I know that they're not tested. Right. Because to me, that's what we're doing. We're trying to prepare students to be better humans, to be whatever, to become whom it is that they should become internally, not who I think that they should be. And that's why I love that moving away from content into skills makes sense to me.
Totally.
It just does.
Right.
They polled all these people. They pulled tons of information. I mean, this is like the World Summit on global business. They have access.
That's crazy.
And they identified these 56 foundational skills that post-COVID need to be addressed in business.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's how new this is. They actually published a report in 2019 and they're like, we have to do this again. So in the report, there's graph material that shows the shift from 2019 to 2021.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. But before we get into, because one of the things that we're going to talk about is how some really specific ways to put this into practice in your classroom.
Right.
And we always try to get there.
I feel like, we have standards, right?
Yeah.
And we're trying to use standards as if they're foundational and they're actually going to guide our instruction. I find that I'm in the John Carippo camp. But knowing the standards is fairly useless to your actual, your craft, the craft of teaching. So if we are trying to like recalibrate, if we're moving into this third wave of educational reform, which is going to be driven by business, we need to be looking at this and be aware of what's coming down that pipeline for in terms of skills, because as we know, like the standards aren't going to shift for a while. No. Everything in education moves.
This Titanic takes a while to shift.
A long time. So I just love that Daggett's about this and that you're bringing it here. Like,
I'm so into it.
This is really good information.
So before we get into like the specifics of them, and there's no possible way we'll cover all 56. That's not happening. We're going to cover like a very small handful of them. Yeah. And super encourage people to find the report and read it.
Yeah. We'll link to the study.
Yeah. We'll need to do that in the show notes. Mm-hmm. But there were these 4 kind of domains that popped out as like more advantageous.
Okay.
And these aren't individual skills. These are kind of aside from this 56 skills. It's in the report.
They're bracketed under these?
Yeah. Okay. And so it was like, of all of these, here's 4 that are actually like, we really need to work on. And it was kind of surprising what they were, because it has nothing to do with grammar, mathematics, science. It has nothing to do with that, which is such the focus of what we're doing.
Okay.
So the 4 were, number 1, work plan development.
Work plan development.
That's what they called it. And what they mean by that is, can an individual see a big picture, break that into smaller steps, set timeline goals and processes for self-reflection within that.
Wow.
And so like as teachers, we do this a ton.
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, I need to teach them how to do this whole unit. Yeah. I'm going to break it down into small steps.
Yep.
But we never really give students the opportunity to do that for themselves. Ooh. So that's like literally the number 1 that came out was work plan development, planning a work plan.
Right. I mean,
I don't profess to know how to implement all of these things, but I'm starting to turn my thinking there. That's what I'm doing.
Well, I mean, we talk about executive functioning. We talk about organizational skills that we're trying to impart to students. And I don't know about you, but that is really one of the major areas that I have been working on this year. Like that is a real skill gap that I'm seeing. And that's always a skill that students are developing, but we're seeing some students that have
very low ability,
really struggling to put together, okay, to get from point A to point B, I have to do this, even in like assignment completion.
Yeah.
So we got to start being more intentional about
and
teaching
so like I've always had this kind of like fantasy dream in education.
Okay.
I've never done it. I want to, especially with AI, I can do it now. Yeah. And with high school students, I can guinea pig that and clean up the weird mess that's going to happen. I just know it will. It's fine. I would love to give them a set and be like, okay, in the next 3 weeks, I need you to be able to do X.
Right.
And then let them craft the unit to get them there.
That is like end goal.
It's end goal. We're not there yet, but I kind of want to do it.
Almost like that. That would be so hard to plan.
Yeah, it would be so hard to plan. And I know there are literally people pulling over and screaming in their cars right now listening to that. I'm sorry.
I can't do that.
No, but I think even to start really small, like a single small skill, to be like, I need you to be able to do this. Start by saying, at what level can you currently do it? And then like, what's the next level? Okay, how are you going to get yourself there?
Yeah.
It requires so much trust.
We've talked about this a bit, though, and I like the idea of the skill tree. The skill tree where you're like,
your idea.
So this is like, from like video games and RPGs and stuff. A skill tree is when you're working on your character, right? And you're unlocking their potential.
Yeah.
Because they'll be like, oh, I've specialized in magic. And then I have this whole skill tree of magic that I can do, but I have to unlock it step by step, right? And students really understand that language. They understand it. And can pick that up pretty readily. Where it's just like, if you frame things in terms of you are practicing skills and there is a skill tree, Like it doesn't mean that like once you master this one math concept, you're done with math.
Yeah.
The next thing is going to build on that thing. And if you start to see things progressing in that direction, it's motivating too, which is what we have been talking about up to this point.
Well, and nod to Simon Sinek, the infinite game, that like there's no end. Right. You don't win or lose in your career of education.
No.
It's just always ongoing. And like writing, we've talked, like you're never done. There's never a final draft. You just decide that that's the end.
Yeah. You decide it's done, or the publisher decides it's done.
Yeah.
I'm
there right now. Right. So, but yes, but back to these 4 identified things. The work plan development was one thing. The next one was asking the right question.
The right question.
I thought that was really interesting.
Asking the right question.
Like asking right questions is how they word it in the report.
Okay.
Knowing how to get to the information that you are seeking, I think, is what that means.
Right. Wow. Okay. So how do we allow students to do that?
Well, I mean, my brain goes to the Wicked Hydra EduProtocol.
Oh, dude. I love Hydra.
So for people that aren't familiar with the Wicked Hydra EduProtocol, essentially envision a mind mapping situation, but instead of ideas and statements, it is limited to only building questions.
Only questions.
So, you start with a prompt and you ask questions off of that, and then branching question, further and further and further. Yeah. I have seen when I do Wicked Hydra with my students, the first time it's garbage. It's always garbage.
Oh yeah.
Which really it reminds me that students really don't. Well, I believe that we have trained students to stop asking questions.
Yeah, it's much easier to just here's the answer. Memorize the answer.
Yeah.
Rote memorization.
And so I love that. Asking right questions. And then the other 2, just to kind of get into them a little bit, was self-confidence.
Self-confidence is a skill?
Is being
that valued. I mean, I can see that in business, like business leaders are always like, oh, you have to
present yourself.
But like
self-confidence. Yeah. The recognizing your worth in the place where you find yourself.
Okay.
That you are worthy of being there. It has to do with public speaking.
Sure.
The ability to communicate logically.
Being able to command a room, being able to hold attention.
All of that stuff. And boy, we've got a lot of work to do with that one right now. All right. Like the social anxiety, at least in the students that I see frequently.
Yeah.
That is a very common thing. They don't want to talk. They don't want to publicly present their ideas, even when they're passionate about them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you almost have to trick them into doing it, which is EduProtocols is great for that. But yeah, no, I totally relate to that. So I teach that music class as well, right? And I've noticed in the past this is my 5th year doing it. And this year especially, and a little bit last year, in the past I saw students who were very shy. Like teenagers are awkward. They're all awkward, shy.
Yeah.
But the ones that are really into music are really into music, and those are the ones that join my class. And I would see them learn how to perform and gain self-confidence because they pushed through all of that nervousness, which is a natural response to being put on the spot,
right?
In any sense. And then they really began to flourish and be able to take more chances and really be able to put themselves out there. And in the last couple of years, I've started to see more students that are that don't have that, I'll get through this. They just will stop at, this is overwhelming, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really seem to matter as much. So, like there isn't an amount of support that I can provide or structure or community.
Yeah.
Like to get them through that. That's something that they would have to decide. And I worry that is a trend.
Yeah. And so to me, it's such a great example, because the students that are choosing to take your music studio class, they generally know that it is an ensemble class.
Yeah, it's a performance-based
class.
Like there's no secret about that.
And so, you can't negate the fact that they have to perform. It is the class itself.
Right. Yeah, that's the end goal. It's a project. It's structured in project-based learning, and the end goal is we perform in the band. And yeah, it's strange.
Yeah.
To start to see that, it's just like, no, I can't do that.
But like I think I'm like, wow, like some of these students that I see along the way that are crippled by the ability to not engage.
Absolutely. That is,
boy, there's a reckoning heading their way.
Absolutely.
Like I mean, unless you're like, I don't know, like I'm going to absolutely shoot myself in the foot here. Like a coder in a basement.
This is the
I think that is the one
of the person
that you don't have to talk to people.
Right. If you don't have to, well, you're gonna have to. Somebody is gonna be overseeing.
It might be by email. You could email somebody.
You might have to email somebody.
But the majority of careers, jobs, adult pathways require you to have confidence, to know the plan, to figure out how something's going to work, to ask proper questions, and then to deliver with an air of self-confidence.
Right.
Like I understand why these are interesting.
Right. And these are skills.
Are like big, like meta skills.
I don't think that people see that like confidence is a skill.
I know.
It's like something that you have or don't. And that's so wrong.
It's so wrong. It's
That's
built.
so wrong in your thinking.
Yeah.
It is 100%
and it's situational and it's all of that. And then the last one, because we're kind of getting into a meta here.
Yeah.
Was organizational awareness. And I was like, what the jargon is that?
Organizational awareness.
And I thought, this is like the ability to organize, right? And no, it's not. I was surprised. Organizational awareness in the terms of this, as I understand it, was like, where within the organization do you fit? And at first I kind of cocked my eyebrow like, what is this? Know your place? I'm like, I don't know about that one. And no, it was really like knowing lines of stewardship, who's in charge of what, so that you can be good at what it is that you're in charge of and know the boundaries of like, that's not my purview. That's not what I do.
Right.
Which I know my generation really struggles with that.
Yeah.
We're in charge of everything.
Yeah. Gen X is in charge of everything, for sure.
Do not invoke us.
Yeah. Millennials are in charge of the things that they could scrape together.
But I thought it was just interesting that like out of everything in this research, these 4 that bubbled to the top really work together.
Yeah.
Right? So just looking at them again, work plan development, the ability to like plan a project.
Yep.
Asking right questions, the ability to figure out what it is you need.
Yep.
Self-confidence, the delivery of information.
Right.
And then organizational awareness, like what is it that you need to be organizing, planning, and figuring it out.
Organizational awareness almost seems to me like knowing when to ask for help too.
I think that that's a good thing. Yeah.
Where it's like you need to know where your limit is and the limit of your skills or knowledge.
Yeah.
And then if you're overextending yourself, go to the person that has the skills or knowledge that you need in order to get that project done.
Yeah.
And that is a real skill.
It is. And then, we're going to move into how this looks in a classroom, right? Some really practical things. But these 4 things, right? Like project planning, seeking knowledge, self-confidence.
So this is what the business world's looking for.
That's what the business world wants. And show me where on the state test a single bit of that is tested. I mean, a little bit when we're talking like work plan development, there are things where it's like, here's 6 documents, correlate. Yeah, okay, that's there.
Okay.
But of the like 4 top things, we're not doing it. So
what I would like to do is actually leverage AI and maybe correlate the 56 skills with current standards just to see like how they line up at all.
Somebody please do that.
Yeah, that because I'm gonna guess that won't at all.
Yeah.
At all.
Oh my gosh. So specific, like how can we care about this? How can we start working practically with it? Okay.
Right.
So I mentioned that there were 56 foundational skills, which they refer to in the research as deltas.
That was
just for people that are reading it. They're like, that's a delta. And I love, there's this little footnote that I disagree with.
Yeah.
And they call the deltas a distinct element of talent. That's so business.
I don't like that.
I don't like that either.
Like that
Do better, World Report.
Talent.
Yeah. Talent.
No.
They need to listen to Dr. Adam Grant about talent.
They do.
But so we're going to just call them the foundational skills.
Okay.
Just to kind of orient ourselves, I like that there's a great graphic in this report, that it breaks them into 4 main domains. So cognitive skills, interpersonal skills, digital skills, and skills of self-leadership.
Okay.
And then each one of those is broken down into 3 or 4 categories. And so there's 13 kind of groupings is what it is.
Okay.
And so for instance,
this is a lot of metrics.
It's a lot of metrics. And so for instance, if we're looking at under self-leadership, one of them is entrepreneurship. That's the category, right? And like, where do we find what? This is a school, right? What?
Right.
And so the 4 skills under entrepreneurship is courage and risk taking, driving change and innovation, energy, passion, and optimism,
all right,
and breaking orthodoxies.
Breaking orthodox? Yeah, that's not something I would expect from the business world at all.
That's the thing. What? There's things in this, and you know, we spoke a little bit in the introduction, like the people that created this report are a little evil empire.
Yeah.
Right?
This is definitely
we're playing with the dark side here, but this is where the students are headed. They're going to the world of business in some capacity. Yeah. And so to not prepare them for that, I find to be a great disservice.
I think so too. Like you know, on this podcast we've talked about, like, you cannot hide young people from the world,
right?
And you can't, like, shelteredness is much more damaging than knowledge.
You gotta know what the
empowering.
game is that you're being forced to play.
You have to know the game and how to play the game. That's why, you know, you look at Gen Z and they're like, "Why do you teach me how to do taxes?"
You're like, I'm not even playing this game.
That's a good question.
Gen Alpha's like, "No, we don't. We just threw the game board over.
Yeah, we're not doing taxes.
We're done."
But it's like,
I love Gen Alpha.
You know, that's a real question where it's like, you know, on one hand, the fact that we're valuing these specific things, and this you have to fit into this mold in some way in order to be successful. Yes, we don't like that. I don't like that at all. But as teachers, we feel that pressure to prepare, to empower, to give them knowledge so that they can be functional people when they leave our care.
We do them a great disservice. But I mean, I was shocked. Shocked. Right? That, like, the world of government, business, international, global people are saying we need individuals who can break orthodoxy.
Right. Like
challenge tradition and be rebels.
Perfect. I think Gen Z and Gen Alpha are going to do great at that one. We don't need to teach that one at all.
Right. And like, that's one that, you know, getting back to our, like, quote, protecting stations of power that we've talked a lot about that one drives really home there. Like, a lot of educators are going to not enjoy the idea of training students to double back on them.
I know. That is yeah. I've always enjoyed that, though,
to an extent.
To an extent.
Or let me clarify. Yes, when it's done well and it's not just an emotional reaction.
Yes, totally. Question everything. Yeah. That's just how I approach things. And question me too. I'm not beyond.
I'll tell you why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Exactly. You should be able to, hopefully.
So let's talk 4 or 5 like very specific ways that we can start to look about these things in a classroom setting. The first one, just what I've already tried, and it worked well. It's not where I want it to be. Mm-hmm. I'm getting there. Okay. But I did this whole thing exploring Pi, which is arguably my favorite AI personal assistant. It's really, really cool.
You've gotten a lot out of that.
I really have. That's amazing. And so we're exploring it, but I put this, like, writer on the back of the assignment, where I used AI. Here's what I did. I took this research report and I took the assignment that I had created. I put both of them into, I believe, Claude is what I used. And I had it correlate which of the 56 skills were most exhibited in the assignment that I had created. And so it pulled out these 5 kind of skills. And then I asked it to write reflection questions for each one.
Okay.
And so there were like 5 domains with 3 questions each. And then I had the students choose 3 to answer the reflection questions. And that just that opened up a conversation that was meaningful and future focused. So I kind of have this idea where I could take all of the skills and like almost create an appendix of like all 56 skills with reflection questions attached to them, and then give it to students frequently and be like, I need you to go to the document, choose a number of these things that you feel like you've worked on, and then reflect on them, just to start bringing and bubbling these skills up to the surface.
Yeah. I love that in your class. So students, anecdotally are always like, why is your class easy?
I know.
and it's like, because I'm teaching you the skills that I need you to have in order to do the things I'm asking you to do.
Yeah.
It's a good game.
Or I love it when they're like, I feel like we don't do a lot of work, but yours is like the hardest class I take.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how I've used these skills so far. And it really got me thinking that in good education, in teachers that haven't just thrown up their hands because they're overworked and overwhelmed in mental health and all of this stuff, we are doing a lot of these skills.
Yeah,
period.
It's
they're
almost
embedded.
Foundational to good pedagogy.
Not all of them. I don't know if we're really breaking orthodoxies
Probably
that often.
Not, no.
But I kind of just delineated a couple. I used EduProtocols because # that's my world.
Yeah.
But for people that aren't familiar with EduProtocols, they'll make sense to you. So let's talk Iron Chef lesson. Okay, so the Iron Chef lesson, for people who aren't familiar, is essentially a jigsaw where you break up information, give it out to different parties. They chew on just that piece, come together as a group, and then teach the class as a whole. That's like the super stripped down version of it.
Totally.
But I was thinking, I'm like, okay, I know from multiple years of experience that the Iron Chef lesson is awesome.
Yeah.
The students don't get tired of it.
No.
Because the content's always changing, but the platform itself is the same.
Yeah.
The protocol. And I know it's wicked effective. So I was curious to start thinking, does it hit these skills?
Right.
And so the little work, and here's what I came up with. So Iron Chef lesson, kind of modified jigsaw. If we look at the cognitive domain, so cognitive, interpersonal, self-leadership, and digital, those 4 main domains of the skills. Under the cognitive, creativity and imagination, structured problem solving, and active listening. It hits 3.
That, but yeah,
because it's encouraging creative solutions to problems.
Yeah.
They have to analyze in a structured fashion. There's team input. There's breaking up the task into, I never say like everybody gets a slide. I'm like, this task is what your group is in charge of. You break it up the way that you need to.
Right. Okay, so that's organization.
And then there we go. Work plan development and all of that. That's there too. Wow. So then if we look at the interpersonal one, the skills are teamwork, effectiveness, and developing relationships.
Yeah.
You really have to learn to work together, not in like a dreaded group project model, but like, hey, I'm going to do all the images, you do all of the quotations, and then let's talk and make sure that they work, right? We're building skills. Under self-leadership, it hits self-motivation and wellness. And I thought, I was like, oh, what's that one? How does that work, right?
Yeah.
But they are actually fun.
Yeah.
To do these.
Yeah.
And I think it's because they have a stake in it. Like they have the choice of how they break it up.
Okay.
Right? Like
Agency.
I tell them what it is that we need to use, the content. Usually, I don't always. And then I kind of let the baby go. They get to decide how it gets broken up, and then that works for them. And goals and achievement is another one of the 56 skills, because they set like, I'm going to do these things.
Right.
And then they do those things.
Right.
Right.
And
pretty
it's
simple
all
one.
reasonable. In
yeah.
the right
Learning to
time.
manage your own learning and like striving towards hit academic goals. That's really all of that one.
I wouldn't have thought those last few.
Yeah. Under self-leadership.
On the ownership, but that makes So much sense.
Yeah. And then the last of the domains that Iron Chef hits under the digital domain, which if you do it digitally, not everybody does it digitally, but there's two, the digital literacy and digital collaboration. So basically just using tools to work in a group collaborative environment and enhancing what you're able to do through digital means.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, I love doing these analog. I love doing them on paper too, but there is something more effective about a digital space.
Yeah. It's clean. It's quick.
Clean. It's quick. They have the world of the internet to look at.
Imagery, all of those things.
All of that stuff. But so I just thought, maybe that's why I know that the Iron Chef lesson works so well, is it's hitting so many of these things that now have been identified as foundational skills.
Okay. Right.
It's kind of my thought.
So instead of, just aligning the standards.
Yeah.
We're thinking about aligning to real skills.
Practicing these things. And I've done this passive up to this point, right? I couldn't tell you which the foundational skills were that they've been practicing, right? But that's changing now. I want to start bringing it up, articulating it, and saying like, "Hey guys, of these skill sets, which one are you going to focus on
for your participation
in this task?" Just to start bubbling it to the surface,
dude,
right? Like I love doing this, right? The metacognition of teaching, where I talk about Bloom's taxonomy, I talk about depth of knowledge with my students.
So good.
I literally, one of the vocabulary words yesterday was pedagogy.
Yeah.
Because we have to write policy. They have to know what it is.
Right. Totally.
So, but yeah, if I count it up, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 12. Like 12 of the 56 skills is hit by an Iron Chef lesson.
Beautiful.
If you do it on a Google slide.
Fantastic.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk one more. We've got time for maybe one or two more. Let's talk sketch and tell.
Okay.
This
I love
is
sketch
fun.
and tell too.
Okay. So for our non-EduProtocol people, just try this one. Period.
Yeah,
it's so usable.
Yeah.
Essentially, if you were doing it on paper, you would just fold the paper in half so you have a left and a right side. And then you give them some kind of a prompt. And then they draw their answer on one side, and then they think, pair, share. They talk to somebody about what they drew, and then they go back and they write about what they drew. So that's the sketch,
the tell,
and
the recording
of the tell is what that is.
Okay.
Super easy.
Yeah.
Like literally Google #sketch and tell. You'll see a million different examples across all contents, kindergarten through college.
If you want to see the best sketch and tell there is, Adam Moeller.
100%. Yeah.
He has made sketch and tell into a fine art.
I know.
It is.
He's going to text us now.
Beautiful. His sketch and tells are so beautiful. I love that.
Moeller's Musing blog.
Yeah.
Coup de grace. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But so I know that it functions well. I know that the cognitive science behind using art and drawing and I understand that on that level.
Yeah, it's connecting.
But if I start correlating it to these 56 skills, okay, so back to the domains, under the cognitive is communication and mental flexibility. Mental flexibility is one of the skills that they've identified. And so in sketch and tell, right, it's the ability to represent your knowledge visually through storytelling.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And I actually, just from when I was looking through, storytelling is also a skill in there.
Yeah, storytelling is a skill in here, right?
Storytelling. That was another one I didn't expect.
It was another one. And then also the ability to flexibly interpret and present ideas.
Okay.
And that's totally practiced in a really low stakes way over and over and over.
Totally.
And they're also presenting them to the class. But we don't use the P word.
No.
So then that's cognitive, which I think most of education, we kind of think cognitive realm.
Sure.
Right. That's why the other ones are kind of surprising. Under the interpersonal domain is developing relationships, because we do have to talk with each other, and then we share to the class. We got to do the tell. And then teamwork effectiveness. Right. This I think is more basal knowledge of how group work works. But this was fun. Under self leadership was goals achievement. Again, I think that's a pretty common one. Anytime you develop a task and then go through that task, you're working on it.
You're achieving a goal. Okay.
but self-awareness and self-management.
Really?
And I had to think about that for a second. But it totally does, because when you're deciding the prompt, okay, so I like to use what made you smile over the weekend. Okay, it's a really innocuous way to begin. Yeah. I hate the what did you do this summer? Because then you get like the wealthy kids that are like, I went to Aruba again. I was so bored with it, and then you have the kid that was like, oh, we moved our house car from Winco to Walmart, but what made you smile is a really, everybody has something.
That's good.
But when they have to go through the cognition of deciding what to draw, because there's also a time limit, you have to edit and self-regulate how much you're going to do and like pace it out over the like 2 or 3 minutes. And so, there's a lot of like self-awareness and self-management in deciding all of that information. Right. And so even when you're talking in a science course, there's an incredible example on Twitter. I'm sorry, I don't remember the person's name right now. I use this teacher's slide when I present Sketch and Tell. Yeah. And the topic was kinetic energy.
Okay. And
it is this like wicked in-depth cartoon of like somebody pushing something off a cliff, and it's just like this super cool thing.
Whoa.
But you think about like a topic of physics.
Sure.
Right. And it talks about potential and kinetic energy and where the shift happens and the drawing and all this stuff. Okay. But like the management of how am I going to order my thinking? How am I going to represent it on the sheet? How am I spatially going to organize this kind of workflow with arrows and the flow of energy?
Yeah, you're creating a graphic.
You're creating a whole infographic.
Or infographic, yeah.
And then being that's the pre-model, that's the first thing that they do. They start to really order that and then talk it out.
Yeah.
Because we know that which you do and that which you speak are different areas of the brain.
100%. Yes.
And so they speak it out, they hear it out, and then they formalize it in text.
Right. So you're also practicing what I love, a dialectic.
You
gotta go back and forth, have a conversation, get to the bottom of this issue.
And then the last domain, which makes a lot of sense, is the digital. If you're doing it on digitally, right?
Yeah.
I love that one of the new ones here was computational and algorithmic thinking.
Whoa.
I know. And actually, regardless, if you do this on paper, you're still doing that, right? So algorithmic thinking, meaning processual.
Okay.
I'm going to draw this, and then I'm going to draw that. I'm going to make this that big so that the other thing has size for it. Right.
It's like when you're writing a happy birthday banner and then you write happy really big and then the B is big and then it's like a little tiny AY on the end.
Oh my gosh. 100% what that is. So, I mean, these are just 2 examples, right? And of how like, I'm going to call it what it is. Good pedagogy.
Good pedagogy, man.
EduProtocols is good pedagogy.
It is. It's straight up.
And that's not the only good one out there, but they hit so many of these foundational skills in this report, these future-focused skills.
Totally.
And so I guess the reason I'm excited is because it kind of, it was research, it was viable research that's new and current that backed what I'd always thought.
Right.
So this is a little confirmation bias, but it's also like, okay, I knew that was good. I didn't know why it was good and how it was good. And now this is giving a framework to it.
Right.
And so my hope is moving forward, when I do an Iron Chef with students, I'm going to bring up the fact that they're also working on these other things.
Yeah, it's almost what it does is it actually just adds an extra layer of validity to any teaching practice that you're doing that aligns with these things. So there's like a traditional pedagogy that would go with this too, different activities, like the EduProtocols are so cool because it's a framework that you can use and it's so flexible and it doesn't matter really what the content is. It's immediately useful for you tomorrow. Like if you're like, what am I going to do tomorrow? Go look up some EduProtocols, and then you can tell your kids that they're working on foundational skills for their future employment.
And you just made me think of something, which is why I love that we have this dialectical platform. how many times have we said like, when am I ever going to use this?
Every day. Only every day.
And this is a nice way to be like, look, the content itself, maybe not.
Yeah.
But the other skills that we're practicing right now are actually very, very good, right? Like we were joking that like when you're 35 in the middle of your career and you're in a conflict with somebody, you don't need to know how to name the rhetoric that they're doing.
Right.
Like
that's that homonym, man.
That was a bandwagon fallacy. Knock it off, right? Like that's confirmation bias.
Yeah.
And
right.
you're living in a Dunning-Kruger world, man.
Right.
Like we don't need to do that. But the skill around that is when you're in that moment, like your little spidey senses go off and you're like, I don't remember what it's called, but what's happening here is that we're arguing different things.
Yeah. Where miscommunication is happening in a way that we're not going to get to the bottom of unless we change and reflect on what we're doing. That level of self-referential critical thinking.
That was a good word. What was that?
What?
Self-referential critical thinking. Dang! Philosophize.
But yeah, if you can do that, like, oh man, that gives you a leg up on every kind of communication or interpersonal, organizational things. Like there are so many different ways that we miss each other when we're trying to complete projects together.
Yep.
And that's going to be the rest of your life. Like there's no situation wherein other than maybe the
basement
coder in the basement.
Dude.
But
I have to go to 7-Eleven to buy the Slurpee.
Yeah.
So judgmental of me.
It's terrible. But it's true where you're not going to get around working with people. You're going to have to understand how to do that. And the business world is telling you you're going to have to understand how to do that in real terms.
Lee Iacocca. There's a name from the past.
Who dat?
Yeah, that's why I'm older than you. Lee Iacocca was essentially like the guy who revitalized Ford.
Okay.
And if I got the wrong car company, I'm sorry, I'm not from Detroit. I'm almost certain it's Ford.
Big three.
But anyways, he said, major business mogul. He said, I never had a problem in business that wasn't a people problem. Period.
Yep.
It's all people problems.
Emotional.
Yeah.
What was the other one? Okay, we're going a little off track, but there was another skill. There was another skill that was like emotions, like regulating your emotions was actually very important.
Under self-awareness and self-management.
Yeah.
Understanding own emotions and triggers, self-control and regulation.
Yeah.
Integrity.
Yeah.
Self-motivation and wellness. Self-confidence and understanding own strengths.
Yeah, we talk a lot about wellness, and wellness is
understanding
a very trendy
your own
topic,
emotions and triggers.
But that's putting like real measurable metrics on it. Like how well do you know what sets you off, and how are you compensating for that so that you don't break relationships in your work life?
Yeah,
like dude. That's on another level.
Right?
Like if you could do that, you would be the best leader
ever. Oh my gosh,
like you would be top management a year or two.
Yeah. That's one reason why I'm so into this, because it's not skills that I automatically went to as what's needed.
Totally.
Dude, empathy, inspiring trust, humility.
Those were on there too.
And sociability.
Sociability?
Yeah.
Like the social skills.
Be
social skills.
Be a member of the herd.
Be a good human.
Be a good human.
Whoa.
And this is the evil empire. This is the business.
That's crazy.
Global
That be
business
a good human
saying
is
out of every single possible thing that I could be asking education to do.
Right.
4 56ths, 4 of the 56 are empathy, trust, humility, and sociability.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't see that. I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Like the stuff that came out that is in this report is really, really interesting. It's not skills that I would have expected, but they're articulated in a way that is very useful.
Right.
To try to
and so few of them are academic in nature.
Almost none of them.
Right? Like actually. Coping with uncertainty.
Yeah.
I don't know how you test that.
That's like a character skill.
That's the thing. Agile thinking. It's becoming good humans.
Yeah.
What I consider to be good humans.
Totally. Strength of character. That's actually vitally important. And to circle back on Adam Grant's work just a little bit, like he talks about that a lot. Like that's actually a very, very crucial thing. Yeah. And there are ways to nurture that, especially through encouraging kids to read and enjoy reading. That's a big one for him. But yeah, the case studies that he uses in Hidden Potential, all of them are like, people overcoming great adversity. And in order to do that, they had to develop great strength of character, like be able to take criticism, be able to connect with other people, be able to ask the right questions of their mentors, be able to find the right mentors, be able to, know what they don't know, knowing what you don't know. Oh, that's a skill. So like always,
there's so much here.
We're trying to open a discourse about the future of education because that's what we're so passionate about.
I want to be part of it.
All of the work that we're doing is trying to move things in that direction, open a discourse around that. So, when we in our own curious explorations come across a framework that really makes a lot of sense or is very relevant, we want to share it with you. Yeah. And we also want to engage with you around it. Oh, yeah. Like definitely comment. Yep. Leave a review. Like,
oh my gosh. If I could get people together in some format, the comment strand or whatever, to like look at the research and dig in and be like,
so awesome.
Hey, looking at teamwork effectiveness, here's something I do in my classroom. And it hits these 4 of the 56 skills. Like that'd be so rad.
Yes. Cause we can be, we can lift each other up or we can drag each other down. Yeah. And I think that in education, all too often, we just keep trying to point fingers and dragging people down. Let's get some new ideas and talk about them and share them. Yeah. That's what this whole platform's about.
Some doable frameworks.
Exactly.
That like lift and enhance what we're doing. And I don't know. I find excitement in it, and it makes me feel excited to go to work and not cry in my car in the morning. Yeah. That kind of a thing,
that's
right?
That's important.
Yeah, like that's important.
That's important, Jake. Yeah, and it makes you really hopeful, I think. When I see something like this, I'm like, okay, cool. Like what I'm doing is actually really helpful. Yeah.
And that like moving forward, we're not like the business world itself is trying to push this down in age, trying to push it towards education.
Right. Yeah.
And like, that's actually a good thing.
Yeah. Honestly.
So I would love to hear people's take on it. How are you using it? Did I super confuse everybody today in my passionate ramblings and musings?
Yeah. Yeah. Or,
because I mean, but also I love that you brought it up because our point here is not to be sage on the podcast platform.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. This is exploration.
It is. Yeah.
Right. Following our own passions, starting to learn through these things. And I would love for people to join me in this one. Mm-hmm. Like call me, text me, email me, write me. Mm-hmm. Like we're into it. Okay. We got to wrap up. But as always, it has been really good. Don't quite leave yet because it's actually really important what we're about to say is your help is always needed. If you like what we do, it actually is very helpful if you follow us on Apple and Spotify, YouTube, wherever it is. It's a simple thing. That little clicking the button actually gives us a lot of credibility as a platform. And it feels good. We like to hear it. Reach out. Let us know how things are going. And please engage with us. I'd love to hear what it is that you think about the stuff we do.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the views are good.
The views are good. We know people listen all the time.
You listen to the whole thing. Rate. It's crazy. It's like, just behind the metrics for a second.
68% listen to the entire thing.
The entire thing.
That's really high.
Really high.
The people right now are part of that. Thank you.
We appreciate it. Thank you for staying to the end. It's cool. But yeah, we'd like to hear more from you. Yeah. So just putting that out there.
We'll see you later.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.